Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here tonight. My name's McKaylee. I work at Tattered Cover Bookstore. And first and foremost, I want to say thank you. Thank you for supporting local independent bookstores. Thank you for being a part of our virtual community. We would not be here without the support of our community and buyers like yourselves. Tattered Cover has had a tumultuous year, as many local businesses have. And so we thank you for that, for your support, because we would not be here without you. And Tattered Cover would not be here for the last 50 years without you, as Tattered Cover is now 50 years old. We're celebrating that anniversary this year in 2021, which is very exciting for us as a bookstore. And it's because of you that we're able to have amazing authors like the one that we have tonight, and the many authors that we've had in the past, and the ones that we have in the future, which you can check out at tatteredcover.com/event. You can see all the amazing upcoming events that we have planned on our schedule. You can always subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. That's another place where you can find our upcoming events. For those of you cooking fans out there, we have Nigella Lawson and Yotam Otalingi, on April 22nd. So that and more you can check out at tatteredcover.com/event. I want to let you know that also closed captioning is enabled for those who might need it on this video. There's a black bar down at the bottom of the screen with a button labeled CC on it. If you click that button, closed captioning is enabled for those who want it or need it. And I also just want to let you know, because we have branched out in our audience here, just a little bit about Tattered Cover, because some of you may not be local to Denver, while a majority of our audience is. We appreciate those who join us from outside of our state. And so Tattered Cover is a local independent bookstore located in the Denver metro area in Colorado. We have 4 stores in the Denver area, and we have a 5th one coming soon. Our exclusive children's location is opening in Stanley Marketplace this summer. Right now, 3 out of those 4 locations are open right now, as our Lodo store is moving, which is very exciting. So you can come visit us at any of those 3 locations. As long as you're wearing your mask over your mouth and your nose, you can come visit and shop for about 90 minutes or so. But if you're like me and you want to stay shopping in your pajamas, or if you want to stay inside like from the snow that's happening right now, you can do that by shopping at tatteredcover.com for all of your bookish needs. And we really just can't tell you how much we appreciate your support and your encouragement over the last year, but especially over the many years that we've been here. We're so grateful for you all. I want to introduce our fabulous guests tonight. So we have Dr. Lisa Jaffe, who's going to be in conversation with Hadassah Lieberman. And so I want to introduce both of them to you. And here's a little bit about Dr. Lisa Jaffe. She's the Shalomit Reinhardt's director of the Hadassah Brandeis Institute and a faculty affiliate in Near Eastern and Judaic Studies. She's an expert on women's rights under Jewish family law and on the intersection between secular and religious family law. She is the editor of the Brandeis University Press series on gender, culture, religion, and the law, and of the HBI series on Jewish women. She holds 3 law degrees from Osgood Hall Law School and Harvard Law School. And then our author of the night, Hadassah Lieberman, has had a rewarding career dedicated to healthcare issues, assisting nonprofit organizations, improving educational standards, and promoting international understanding, with a particular focus on global women's health. And we're celebrating her new book tonight, Hadassah, An American Story. It's my honor to welcome both Dr. Lisa Jaffe and Hadassah Lieberman, our author of the hour this evening. So we're going to go ahead and have them turn on their videos and their microphones for us here. Perfect. There they coming on right now. Here we go. Welcome, ladies. Hello.
Hello.
Oh, thank you so much for being here.
You can hear us, right?
Yes, I can hear both of you. Well done. I want to just say thank you both for being here tonight. We're very much looking forward to this conversation, and I want to let audience members know that there is a chat next to the screen you're watching us on right now, and that's where you're going to be asking your questions for the audience Q&A portion. But for now, we're going to let Lisa and Hadassah take it away. Enjoy.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So Brandeis University Press is very proud to be publishing this book, and I'm delighted to be in conversation with you, Hadassah. So today we are speaking on Yom HaAtzmaut, Israel Independence Day, And this holiday is part of a cycle of holidays in Israel that moves from Holocaust Remembrance Day to Memorial Day to today, which is a celebration of freedom and independence. And your book, in a sense, takes the reader through a similar arc from tragedy to remembrance to a celebration of freedom. So really, congratulations. It's a tremendous accomplishment. I wanted to ask you how you came to write the book. Why now? And who did you imagine the audience for the book to be?
Well, when I was going through my mother's books in boxes, all of a sudden, because she had died and we were cleaning out things in her apartment, and I had them in my garage in New Haven, Connecticut, where we were living at that time. And I found this diary. I didn't know what it was. It was written in Czech, and it was a language I don't know, even though my parents knew it and my mother had written it. I took it to the Holocaust Museum and I said, could you translate this? And this woman who had gone through these tragic kinds of background translated it. And then I saw my mother had written a diary in the 1970s saying, I have to record these things. I have to tell you about my march into Auschwitz and how I'm sitting. And she went through all the details of sitting in the living room, watching the Nazis take over the house as a central bus station of sorts, a central place. And she said at the end of what she wrote, my two children, I cannot write anymore. I need you to complete this. Well, when I saw that, it totally mesmerized me. I knew I had to go about moving forward about her story, about our story as immigrants, about my story as all the surprises I had in store.
And so the book is subtitled An American Story. Can you say a bit why this story of your family, of your experience as an immigrant, of your experience of tremendous accomplishment here in America? Why is this a quintessentially American story?
Well, having been born in Europe in a dark, dark terrain out of circumstances that no one else had had to that magnitude, that destruction. And then coming to the end of that, when I was born, my parents married, and we went on a big ship to the United States, during which my mother always used to say, when they were on the ship, everyone was getting totally sick, vomiting. I was the only one. Apparently, the captain was dancing with this 10-month-old little baby girl. So I was okay. And it was an American story because we came to the United States of America. I didn't have the language. I didn't have the parents who knew the language. We knew bits and pieces of English, and we kept moving forward. And all the stories I tell in the book about an immigrant coming to the United States and learning a language, learning manners, and simultaneously being told by my parents, no, you don't dress like that. No, you don't wear your hair like that. Because they were giving me what they thought was right. And that's what all immigrants sort of go through, the struggle of becoming something different and simultaneously having parents who keep pulling you back to what they know.
So when you came to a small town in Massachusetts. Can you talk about where you grew up and what that was like, and if there was a Jewish community there?
It was a small town in Gardner, Massachusetts, half hour from New Hampshire. Very small Jewish community. My father, at an earlier age, had been ordained as a rabbi, and he had also gone to law school. And so there was an opening in a community in Gardner, Massachusetts, where, we spoke Yiddish and we had to learn all the words in English. And my father used to sit at nighttime, I write this also, practicing his English because he had to learn to speak an English that he could lecture people with. And it was an amazing adventure. People were very respectful. There was a small community of Jewish people, but not so many. And my dad took that job because that was what was available to him. And so there we were as immigrants in a small New England town, different language, different culinary delights. Everything was a little different. As my mother cooked some of the Czech dishes that she loved.
And you had an unusual name for a little girl growing up in Gardner.
Yes.
I have to say, well before I met you, when Joe was on the ticket
Yes.
to be vice president, I was actually living in Canada, and my friends and I, we all called each other saying, his wife's name is Hadassah. And it was so exciting to see someone who had such a clear Jewish identity in this public role. And it was emphasized by your name. But you tell the story in the book that almost was not your name. Can you talk about that?
When I was born, and this is all after the war, when everyone, grandparents, family members, all died. And when I was born, my father went to the Czech authorities to register his name, my name, and my father said, okay, Esther, and the Czech authorities said, that's a German name. So he quickly thought, Hadassah is the translation of Esther. And he named me Hadassah. So when we came to the United States, my dad was sitting in front of one of the official buildings, and there were the Catholic nuns who were registering all the new immigrants. And my father wanted to change my name back to Esther. And the nuns said, oh, Hadassah is a beautiful name. Rabbi, don't change it back. Let her stay as Hadassah. And that's how I did it. And my whole life, it was Hadassah, Hadusa, Hasada. And this, my book was the big thing, having Hadassah on it. Or my campaign button that I went around talking about Joe and all the things that we had to do. So Hadassah was a special name, and it rang through this country as I introduced myself. Oh yes, I'm Hadassah. And they could barely pronounce it until they got used to it.
So tell us about how you met Joe. So that's a wonderful part of the story.
Well, after a divorce, which is hard for everyone, and I worked hard at that and tried to just, make our lives as normal as we could. And my roommate, who I had known, she was my roommate for 2 years when I was at Yeshiva University, the Stern College section. And we met. And then when I was divorced, Edie said to me, I know a man, and she was from New Haven. I know a man who's nice. He's a politician, but he's nice, because she didn't care for politicians. And then she said, maybe I'll introduce you to him. Your son looks a little like him. And I thought, what a weird intro, these lines she's giving me. But sure enough, I met Joe, and he was coming up to New Haven, and he, lived in that area. And I was coming up to visit my girlfriend. So I stayed at her house, and then Joey came over to meet me, and he said, oh, by the way, are you free Saturday night? And I said, okay. Then he says to me, well, I'm going on a campaign stop. I'd like you to accompany me. So I said, yes, how do I identify myself? As my driver. So I couldn't believe that. But I started to learn the trade of the politician. So I was his driver that night, the intros. And we were together later. Chris, I didn't have time to talk to him and he to me till like 11:30. That was all that campaign stuff. And at that time, we sat down, talked, and we were talking till like 3 a.m. at my friend's house. And then he had to take off because he had an early campaign stop in Hartford. So that was how it started. And we worked hard and bonded. He had 2 children and I one. And we knew that the most important thing to us, because we never expected divorce would be in our resumes, it was that a partner that we choose and chooses us will love our children as much as we love our children. So we never said step or any of that stuff. It was hard, but it worked. It's one of my best accomplishments.
That's a wonderful part of the book, how you describe the challenges of creating a blended family. And a nice part of the book is as well that you bring in the voices of the children, that this is not just your story, it's the story of your parents through excerpts from your mother's diary and your father's sermons. But you tell your story of creating this blended family and you bring in the voices of all your children, sometimes as counterpoints, sometimes as confirmation. Why did you decide to structure the book in that way, to bring in all these voices?
You know, from the very start, and it's interesting because not everyone professionally agreed with me. They all said, oh, it's your story, it's your memoir. You don't have to have anyone in. They finally agreed, oh, it's children, okay. But it was my feeling from the start that my family speaks with me, speaks for me. My children are my children. They're my blood, they're my skin. And I don't want to tell a story that's devoid of their influence. And my father and mother, they were all part of how I am here today, speaking with you about these memories. And I'm very appreciative. And I'm very appreciative of Brandeis Press to be publishing my book that, they emanate from that period of time. And they proved to the world that they could become a university that reaches out in so many ways with degrees and with their speeches. So that's what we all yearn for, we immigrants, we survivors.
So you've led a very public life in your political work. Can you talk a bit about things that you found challenging in that life and things that you particularly enjoyed?
Well, I'll start with what I particularly enjoyed: bonding with people, going to the Midwest and meeting people. I can't tell you how many people came up to me. I don't know if they're Republican or Democrat. They came up to me at these rallies and said, I like your husband. He's not a political kind of guy. He's a religious guy of faith. We respect him. I was so touched by that as I was going around. And I understood that we can bond on various points that we believe in so many ways. And it's important for all of us to try to pull together. And unfortunately, more recently, some of what I most enjoyed and loved is something what I least enjoy and love today, where people don't listen to each other. They don't bond together. I always had situations where if I didn't agree with my father, he didn't agree with me. Okay, so maybe we had a fight, a disagreement. But eventually you come together and you realize that if someone doesn't agree with you, maybe there are some points they're making that you ought to listen to, or you ought to try to convince them of your opinion. So it was more the bonding and caring that brought the biggest ups and brought the lowest downs.
So your husband was famous for the close relationship he had with John McCain. And in fact, Meghan McCain has written an afterword to the book talking about that relationship. Can you talk about that relationship and why that was so unusual and why it's so unusual now to have something like that in public life?
Well, Joe and John were really close. Senator McCain was very special. And that doesn't, I mean, Joe didn't agree with every point that John made, and John didn't agree with everything Joe said, but they were very close. They were very close friends, and they understood each other and they listened to each other. And when John chose Joe as his vice presidential, he was thinking of doing it, but his party couldn't handle some of Joe's views on certain aspects, whether it was pro-choice of this or that. So it didn't work out. And John afterwards was disappointed because he had wanted Joe to go with him. So you learn things along the way. And John, we've been at his ranch when he was ill, and Megan's a wonderful person, and John's wife. They're very, very special, giving people. And coming together, John and Joe both understood the importance of believing and listening to someone who is not totally on your lane. How else do you get together? How else do you get legislation formed? And the way it's been working recently does not produce a final product, because our democracy is based on trying to pull together, to collaborate. And that's not always happening these days.
Yeah. One of the other unique features about your public life is that you and Joe are Orthodox Jews, and you kept kosher and you observed the Sabbath during your campaigns and during your time in Washington. Can you talk a bit about what that was like?
Well, we were both that way before campaigns. You know, Joe's been in campaigns for a long time. And there was no doubt about it. That's what was going to happen when Joe ran for any of his offices. And I remember so many of those in the state of Connecticut times, those events that we had to go to before Shabbat when it got dark in the evening, and then run out of. And we didn't do politicking on Shabbat, which was quite different from most people. And it was fine because it gave us time, and we tried to get together with family members, even during the difficult vice presidential campaign in 2000 with Senator Gore. The joke between Al and Joe was Vice President Gore would say to Joe, oh, well, maybe Shabbat will be when you're off, and Sunday, I'd like to observe Sunday, will be when I'm off. So they both chuckled, they laughed. So it was quite an experience, and the staff loved it. They used to call it not Shabbat, they call it Shabuti. Oh, it's Shabuti time tonight. And they go out doing stuff because they had free time. The ones who were assigned to Joe were not, except when they were needed, were free. So they were happy about Shabuti.
You described a particular Shabbat in the book during the long and protracted election in the year 2000, where much like this last election, it was unclear for an extended period who had won. Can you talk a bit about that?
It was amazing. It was Friday, and everything was going on about the Supreme Court, this, that, all the decisions that had to be made. And Joe was on the phone with Vice President Gore, and they were chatting about everything that was going on. And then they hung up, and then the phone rang, And it was Vice President Gore calling to ask, why don't you come over to the house and just bring your Shabbat things? So I got a bag. I put my candles, my Shabbat challah, my food that we were going to have, and paper plates of things because we have kosher dishes. And we raced over to the Gore's house, which was the house that we were supposed to think about taking over, if things had worked out. Anyway, we went there and I set the table for Shabbat. And it was amazing. And Donna Brazil, who was working for the Gore campaign, came in to the Shabbat table. The rest of the staff had to go running out to what they were doing. And we sat there, and it was so funny. Tipper was so cute. She just looked at her iPhone, said, they don't have their iPhones here. I'm putting mine away. Let's just not have them for the night. So it was cute.
It was great how it gave you peace and a break during that very difficult time.
Absolutely. It was a big deal. And it also gave others who knew we were doing it. There was one of the first Shabbats, the Lubavitch rabbi he wasn't so close in the area that we were in, but he traveled an hour, whatever. And he came and brought dinner on Friday night and lunch on Shabbat. And I looked at him, I said, Rabbi, how can we repay you for this? What can we do? He looked at me and he said, you can give the woman who was your advance woman, who happened to be Jewish, and she was from Florida. And the rabbi said, ask her to light the Friday night Shabbat candles. And I asked her, and her face, she didn't do that. She had this very sweet, blessed look on her face. And we'll never forget the kindnesses so many people had for us. Special times.
One of the most moving chapters in the book is where you write about traveling with the American delegation to Germany for the first time for the 50th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. Can you tell us why you chose to make that trip and about the experience?
Well, what had happened is that one day, out of the blue, here, I think Hani was 4 or 5 then, I don't know, a littlest. The other kids were all in their own places. And the White House, a woman who was in charge of Jewish affairs, asked Mrs. Lieberman, can you become part of the delegation going to Auschwitz on the 50th anniversary? So when I heard that, I gulped and had to call her back. She said, please call me back. And I remember going on the phone to call my mother and say, Mommy, I've just been invited to go to Auschwitz. And she heard that and said to me, oh, don't do that. Be careful. You don't need to do that. Don't do that. And after a while, she hung up the phone. I hung up the phone. And I said to my husband, I have to do it. I can't not go to Auschwitz to see everything that so many people endured and died for. And so I called my mother back and said, Mommy, I have to go. I'll be okay. And I got on a plane, took care of everything at home, and told Joey, this is important to me, obviously. It's important to all of us. And so then took off the plane ride to Auschwitz. It was amazing. And there was a group of the delegation, including Elie Wiesel. So when I walked in to Auschwitz, near him and near several others who were part of the delegation, we were amazed at what we were seeing. And it was an incredible trip. And the irony is, I'll never forget, I asked my husband's person who helped with press and other things, I asked Jim Kennedy to please look at what I'd written and ask him what he thought before I submitted it. And his father had been part of the Rainbow Coalition that liberated Dachau, where my mother was liberated from, Jim Kennedy. And I was so moved by that, and never forget, at a later point in time at the Senate, there was a reception for that brigade. And I will never forget shaking each of their hands with tears in my eyes. It was an amazing moment.
We're going to turn it over to the participants to ask their questions, but I have one more question. And this is about what you brought back with you from Auschwitz. I think you had discussed with your mother bringing back some soil, and you made a different choice.
Well, I thought I'd bring back soil. Then I went there, and someone who, a scientist, whatever, someone who knew everything there was to know about the soil and all of the problems that had existed, told me there are still pulverized bones in the soil. And I thought, I don't want to bring back bones of destruction in the soil. I don't want that. And I found a rock in the soil, on the soil. And I thought, it's a rock. It just stays as a rock. It doesn't take things in. It doesn't put things out. It's a strong rock. And the tradition in Judaism is you're supposed to take a rock and put it on a gravesite to show that you visited. And I thought, I'm going to take this rock and put it on my daddy's gravesite, so I won't forget and he won't forget. And I will never forget. That was a moment.
And that model of strength and resilience and memory is one that really flows throughout the book. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for doing this. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Lisa, you had such wonderful questions, and thank you so much for both of you and your responses. And I want to turn it over to the audience now. Once again, the chat that is next to the screen that you're watching us on right now is what you can type into to ask your questions. Mostly we're going to be directing our questions to Hadassah about her book and her life. But we also invite Lisa to join in as a reader and any comments she would like to share as well. But this one is a really interesting one to start off with, Hadassah. Have you ever thought of running for political office yourself?
Sweet. Not really. I worked so hard helping, assisting with political office and raising family and bonding a family. So, thank God no, I haven't. But I appreciate whoever asked that. I'll tell Joey.
Oh, I'm sure he would appreciate it too.
Yeah.
This is really another one of what inspired you to write the book in the first place, and why a book and not some other form of media that you wanted to tell your story with?
Well, I thought of a book right away. As I said earlier, my mother's diary, circumstances, wanting people to understand that a story like this can come out of the darkness, as I said earlier, and go forward and have light coming out. It's like my girlfriend, who is an artist in Florida and who in Israel now. She was in Florida and she's in Israel now. She always used to do these dark paintings, and I'll never forget how they lightened up, and her background was similar to mine. And I just feel that the fact that I could lighten up, and then I could ultimately meet Joey and ultimately have a full family and be happy, was a lighting up.
I like the way you describe that as a lighting up. There's something so hopeful about that. This is another great question too, of what does your family think of the book?
Oh, they all like it. They all, from what I'm hearing, unless they're keeping secrets from me. No, actually, I just got an email from our middle son, and I got another one from our oldest son and our daughters, just saying they really liked it and they thought it was a good job. So I'm just happy. It's short. So most people have told me, oh, I could read it for the night. I could read it in the afternoon. And that makes me happy because people are tired of too much length, I think. We've come into this different time where we're remote control and all the things that go fast. And maybe that's not so good, but that's where it's at today.
Did you find that too, Lisa, when you were reading it, that there was a sort of ease with the length of it, of her book?
Absolutely. It was a wonderful Shabbat afternoon read, and I know it was for many other people. Really moving, but also really quick paced, and the format with so many different voices is really intriguing and pulls you along.
And so what has been the response from the community, from the Jewish community about this book, for those who share similar family stories and being or immigrants themselves? Have you gotten a lot of response out of that?
Well, it's so interesting to tell the story that I recall riding with Joe and a driver, and he had to get dropped off at the law firm, and I was going to get out and go elsewhere. And I will never forget, I was just talking about the chapter on immigration. And this driver, who is Pakistani, said, Hadassah, I would like my children to read that chapter on immigration. And I was very touched by that. Here he was, a Pakistani driver, and he thought I had come up with something that related to his family and all of the struggles that you have as an immigrant, the language, and how many phone calls you make to make doctor's appointments or to interpret something that your parents are being told, and they may not understand it fully because of the language differences. And, the homework I didn't get so much help with because they couldn't do the language so well. So, we have to move forward. And immigration, I always say to people, try to be respectful. We may need more laws, more restrictions. I don't know, but remember that this is a free country, a country of acceptance to many. We're all immigrants in this country, ultimately.
Absolutely. Too true. In your book, you recount an experience trying to get home on 9/11. Can you share that with us tonight, if you don't mind?
Oh, that was an amazing story. I was in Dallas, Texas, giving a speech, and it was a large group. And the woman who was with me, Heather, she was, helping me out, get into the speech, do this, do that. And then we came back and decided to sit down and have a little chat and go to sleep. And we had been asked to come, invited to a museum in a man's home in Texas, at this beautiful museum. And he was a big supporter of the Democrats. So we were supposed to go. And there was a Democratic fundraiser. And I thought, oh boy, I'm so tired. Okay, no problem. I'll go. So we go there, and I'm inside. And all of a sudden, something's going on. Someone says to me, they come into the room where we're sitting, and it's the daughter of the man who has the museum in his home. And she says, oh, the tower's been hit. I said, what? We go running out, and everyone's outside. Everyone is outside, and everyone is so upset. And I'm thinking, oh my God, what is going on? Excuse me. My voice.
That's all right. You're in the middle of telling us a great story. We're all very wrapped, so no worries.
I'll take it. And there we were. Oh, just a minute. There we were. Unbelievable. And while we're standing out, Joe called me and he said, don't be excited. Be calm. And that's what I did. I was very calm. And then I couldn't reach him again because everything had been blocked out. And Heather and I went back to our hotel. We were thinking we were going to get out that night on a flight. Nothing. There was no air flights. There was nothing. And we had to hang around for a few days. And I kept seeing people who were waiting to have cabs pick them up, but there was nowhere to go. They couldn't go to the airport. I'll never forget this woman standing with a bunch of colleagues in front of a hotel. And we just looked at each other and we were Americans, frightened. And she it was before COVID. Before COVID, and put her arms around me. And it was so, because we were Americans and afraid. This went on. And then Heather and I said, what are we going to do? Heather said, Hadassah, you know what we have to do? Maybe we have to drive home. We have to get drivers who will drive us. So we go to a hotel and we ask this man in the concierge area if he knows of any drivers. He calls around. Finally, he gets 2 drivers, which was unbelievable. There we were, and these 2 men with tattoos on their arm. It was not as, well, it was 9/11. It wasn't as stylish to get some tattoos, but it was so amazing. And they're sitting there, and then Joe was on the phone again. He was able to come back and he said, okay, because our daughter, our little one, was at a friend's home. Otherwise, she was picked up, she was at school, but the friend picked her up at school and brought her home to her house. And Joe said to me, let me talk to the driver. So I put Joey on the phone and he starts saying, look, you have precious cargo. Please watch them. And man said, yes, no problem. And we started driving home. And I'll never forget, we stopped in some diner to get a little something to eat. And as we're going through the diner, the men get seats at another table, and we had the second table. And I said to the men, please don't do that. Come join us. We drove together. Come join us. And that was very special.
It sounds like, wow, what a story too. We all have those moments of where were you when 9/11 happened, but I love that sense of unity, of the hug you received and people coming to your table, literally inviting them to your table. That's huge, especially in what became such a divisive time in our world as well. So
terrible
story. This is our last question that we like to ask here at Tattered Cover of all of our events. And it actually does apply for both of you, for Lisa, for you as a reader, and for Hadassah, you as the author. And we love to ask this question, interpret it as you will. But Lisa and Hadassah, what did this book teach you? So Lisa, I would love it if you could start first, and then we'll end with our author of the hour here.
I think it teaches me the importance of being open and curious and sort of open to the world and learning from one's experience. That Hadassah brings to bear many painful elements of her family's history and the challenges of immigration, but they did not hold her back. They were things that gave her strength and resilience and led her to take hold of the possibilities in her life and exploit them and develop them in wonderful ways. So I think it's an inspiring story.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So sweet. All I would add, she said so much, so beautifully. I thank you very much. I would add that being honest and truthful and outspoken simultaneously is so important. You can't assume that people know all of these things. And I have so many close friends who come from very different backgrounds and places and experiences. And my life becomes richer when I can be open to them and they to me. And our sharing of experiences has been very important to all of us. And just as I thank you tonight for inviting me, that was so beautiful, and I'm really touched.
It's our pleasure, and we're very excited to have you and have this book out in the world, which you can order Hadassah, An American Story at tatteredcover.com or get it at any one of our locations in the Denver metro area. This was such a treat, for lack of a better word. I really enjoyed it. Hated stopping the two of you in your conversation at all. So thank you both. Lisa and Hadassah, I'd love to take a moment to give you the opportunity to remind people who you are, where they can find you online, and anything else that you want to say before we end tonight. And Lisa, again, I'll have you start, and we'll end with Hadassah Lieberman.
So I teach at Brandeis University. I'm the director of the Hadassah Brandeis Institute, which is a center that does Jewish women's and gender studies. And we are proud to be the publishers of this book as part of the HBI series on Jewish women for Brandeis University Press.
That's beautiful. I don't know what to say. I'm so filled with this book and talking to so many people about it. And I am thankful that I've been able to produce this, to publish this through Brandeis University. And I am proud of everything I've been able to do and see to this time. And I wish all of us a beautiful, beautiful year with no problems about health. Let's pray we all can go forward, up, away, and no more germs, I hope. And
absolutely. And we're grateful that you were able to produce this book for us as well, because it's a story that needs to be told. And we're very excited to have it out and shared with everybody as well. So once again, get your copies of Hadassah, An American Story at tatteredcover.com. Ladies, if you'll just stick around while I close this out here. My name's McKaylee, and I'm with Tattered Cover Bookstore tonight, celebrating the new book, Hadassah, An American Story by Hadassah Lieberman, in conversation with Lisa Jaffe. We're excited to have you here tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. Stay safe, everybody. Happy reading. Goodbye, all.